Hello and welcome to New Earth Awakening. Today we welcome Athena Laz, a best-selling author, intuitive dream teacher, and psychologist. She helps people dive into the depths of their inner worlds while also connecting to the unseen realms of spirit. She believes that our awareness is the greatest asset we have, and that when we learn to tune in, we discover just how powerful this force can be. Her work, books, oracle, and programs have been enjoyed by thousands of people worldwide, weaving the sacred across all corners of the globe. Athena, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to connect.
Thank you so much for being here. And let us start by you sharing your path and how it led you to the work you're doing today.
Thank you. So I was naturally born an intuitive person. I believe we actually all are. And I would have lots of dream experiences and lots of lucid dream experiences when I was younger. I obviously did not know what lucid dreaming was at the time, but I would have these kind of wild experiences at night when I would go in between falling asleep, that stage where you're kind of awake and you're about to go into sleep. And then when I hit my 20s and I had to pick a career path, I really was attracted to the field of psychology. Someone gifted me a book by Louise Hay, and it's a very popular book. It's a well-known book called You Can Heal Your Life. And when I received the book, I went, oh, this is so amazing. It was like a light switched on in my mind that we have the power of how we control our thinking, or not control, but we have power in how we show up. And to my 20-year-old self, that was a big, big deal. So I read that book and that really motivated me to pursue psychology. So I studied to become a psychologist and I became a psychologist. But at the same time, I worked at this metaphysical shop and it had beautiful books on Buddhism, Zen, anything metaphysical, witchcraft, uh, audio tapes, whatever the range was that consciousness could go through, it was in that shop. And so that led me to really, I feel like, have a good grounding between foundational psychology, but then also being able to expand awareness and consciousness. And then after a while, I felt very called to write a book. And so I did, and I set up athenalaz.com. And my first book, The Alchemy of Your Dreams, was published a couple years ago. And that was really wonderful for me because it helped me, I feel, to connect to so many people worldwide, but also to help other people activate dreams in a very practical way. So that's kind of what led me to that. And it definitely wasn't a linear path, but that's the short story.
Yeah, I haven't heard anyone yet who said it was totally linear.
I do believe maybe some people really have good linear experiences. I have not had that.
Indeed, everything exists somewhere.
Everything exactly. Come and tell us.
Yeah, please share your story if it's so. So let us start with dreams, psychology, bridging both worlds, which is basically just one world. In my opinion, everything is energy, the first hermetic law, the all is consciousness. So it's all different presentations of the same and different ways to connect to spirit. So let's talk about dreams, psychology, Carl Jung, and dream interpretation. Please take
Sure.
us.
Well, I think it's a wonderful connection that you're making here, right? So sometimes to me, the most spiritual solution can be a physical one. It can be a psychological one. When we dream, we are working in the realm of symbols and metaphor, at least if we are not lucid, right? So for most of us, we go to sleep at night and we have these experiences and then we wake up with this information. And the way we use that information is what can help guide us. And so the necessity of the psychology is to know that sometimes our own patterning is very much mirrored in dreaming. It's also mirrored in our outside relationships, in our experiences. And the higher consciousness comes in because the dreaming world is a counterbalance to what our waking minds or our egoic minds often want us, or not want us, but have us playing out on autopilot. And so the minute we step into that awareness position, that observer position, we really begin to alter how we move through the world. And so intuition is the same thing. When we work with an oracle deck and we're working with symbols and we're working with, right, we're working with intuition and we're learning how to recognize what's being given to us from something unseen, but mirrored through a symbol. And so that's the link. So in Waking Life, the links we see, people will say, oh, it's a sign from the universe. The sign is a symbol. It's a symbol that we've paid attention to. We've recognized it, right? And so that's kind of like a broad overview of how it all, I know you know this, but how it all connects. And then when it comes to archetypes and Carl Jung's work, I have great appreciation for him and what he gifted the world, and also for all the Jungian analysts that carry that through now. When I think about him and the time he lived through, he was living through wars, you know, and they were really, he really helped. I definitely feel like Western consciousness and also actually worldwide consciousness. I think the ideas have really trickled through. To just remember the deep embodiment of what mythic language gives us, of what archetypal forms help us see, and then also to really recognize that they're real energy and that they're energy that is also embodied outside of us. So it's not just all something within, at least not, I don't believe in that. And so my book coming up in September, which I'm not sure if my team told you about, but I have a book coming out. It's called Women Who Dance in the Dark, and it's all about awakening your inner seer through myths, dreams, and story. And it's on the medial archetype. And so this archetype is the archetype that helps us link the waking world and the dream world. And so we do that through symbols, and we do that through dreams, and we do that through ritual, and we do that through intuition, right? So there's no disconnection, like exactly like what you were saying at the beginning, between the worlds, because most people still talk about it like there is. And actually, I think we need to heal that separation.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. That is the perceived limitation of
Yeah.
separation, which is totally just, well, it's a framework here because you need that in order to be able to get individuated, as Carl Jung said, right?
Yeah.
But it's just a tool as well to utilize, to understand, okay, I need to individuate myself. What does resonate with me? What doesn't resonate with me? What's for me? What isn't, right? But that's it, basically. We are all connected. Quantum. You know what I mean? It's like,
Absolutely, right? And I think what's happening now is that I think because there's such large fields, right? The field of archetypal psychology, it's so large. And to expect one field or one school of thought to be able to know everything or to share everything, it's too much of an ask, you know? But I think us as individuals, we're living in times now, we are seeing this so amazingly, right? AI and technology, we are leaping into something new. And even if it has happened in our collective history, most don't remember. And so we're in this very interesting time where, yes, it is about individuation on a personal capacity, but then also the remembrance, like you're saying, that we are all connected. And then also at the same time that we are interestingly connecting with technology, and that's a real reality, and how we show up is going to make a big difference in that. Like if we show up through fear, or if we show up and hold a different kind of tone, right? And so we'll see that people are already seeing that. I see this in my groups, that people will have specific dreams. The symbols come up in very specific ways. And so anyone also who's had a conversation with AI on symbols will also see this, right? So we're really at the forefront of consciousness, at least for what we remember at the moment. And I think that it puts us in a really unique and what could be quite a beautiful position.
Exactly. Yes. And it's just on us if we utilize things in fear or in love, right? That's the difference. Makes
That's the
all the
huge one.
difference.
Makes all the difference. And I think as like a shared consciousness, if we can collectively do it as a shared consciousness, it's going to make a huge difference, you know. But exactly like what you're saying, how we each choose to show up daily, I think that's also part of this, you know. It's this and that. It's not one or the other.
Exactly. That's the
Mm.
next ideology, which is polarity, duality, you know.
Right.
It's not only this and that, good, whatever. It is and. It's an end situation. Trinity, right? Awesome. I love it. Athena, please talk with us about your books. Tell us the name and what topics and themes you discuss in it.
I wrote a book called The Alchemy of Your Dreams. It has a similar cover to this. This is in different. This is
Portuguese.
yeah, Portuguese, right? This is the Korean version, which was kind of fun. It got translated into a lot of languages. And The Alchemy of Your Dreams, it's a wonderful book for anyone who is interested in lucid dreaming, connecting with spirit through dreaming, but then also who wants a really grounded perspective of like, okay, well, how do I actually begin to work with this world, right? And then I have a book called this is a Deliberate Dreamer's Journal. It's a journal companion to the dream book. And literally on Tuesday, my oracle deck came out, Sisterhood of the Seers Oracle. This is all about tapping into intuitive knowing. It's got a very specific energy, this oracle deck. It's a very soft, gentle energy, but also seership. If we look at it mythically or energetically, it's very much also about looking at what we need to see when we don't kind of want to see it. And so that comes up in the deck. And don't have an advanced copy of the new book, but this is what the cover's going to look like. So I know it's
Wow.
backwards, but that's it. We'll make sure to send you all the things.
So let's talk about the alchemy of your dreams. How can people start connecting with the dreams? I personally utilize dreams. I'm also a dreamer. That's how I call
Wonderful.
it. I get a lot of information through dreams, normal dreams, you know, where I sometimes ask for advice or I tell them, you know, as my guides and so on, I tell them, hey, can you please help me with this topic or whatever?
Sure.
Or I just go and lucid dream sometimes, you know, and then I have what I call my Buddha dreams that are pretty fun.
I'd love
Yeah,
to hear
so,
more.
sorry?
I said I'd love to hear more about that.
Yes, you'd like to. Okay. So, for example, there is this one special dream. It was quite funny. So I realized that I was afraid. And so I felt fear. And that in that moment, my brain clicked and it was like, fear is just an illusion. You are love. So that's when I woke up. That was the trigger to wake up. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So, and then I realized I was in the complete darkness. And I had wished to be in the complete darkness, in the womb of nothing and everything. So I was like, cool, I made it. So, and then I was like, okay, so what do we do now? Kind of. And that's when I realized that I started to fall. And I was like, okay, so if we're doing this and I'm falling, then we're going to do it my way.
Good for you.
And then so I went in position, this Superman position, and I was like, I'm coming, higher self. Yeah, well, you know, I'm fun. My guides are fun. So we love to have fun. So I started falling and falling deeper and deeper. And at some stage, I felt fear again. And I was like, yeah, well, this is again disillusion. And I was like, okay, so there is nothing to be afraid of, but we keep on falling and falling and falling. And it's like, okay, what's the purpose of this, you know?
Right.
And then I stopped falling, obviously, right? Because whenever you ask, you get the answer.
Yeah.
That's also one of the things. And then I started gliding down like a feather,
Beautiful.
very gently. And then I realized that there was like a boat or something beneath me, but I wasn't touching it. And I was on a river of water. You
Wow.
know, that water represents the subconscious mind.
Right.
And
Right.
I was on top of it. And I was navigating it very softly and gently and just going with the flow, right? Cool symbology, right?
Yes. Very cool.
And then
And
I was
also,
like, yeah. Sorry, tell me.
oh no, tell me.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, I already had said I want to see my higher self. So obviously, that's where I landed. At the end of the river, there was this little hut and a lot of nature, grass, wood, and all of that. And waiting for me for the ship to land was my higher self. And she presented herself very vibrant, shiny.
Beautiful.
And she looked a little bit like this Maria kind of way, you know, with
Sure.
this clothing, you know. And so I landed there and I was like, hey, cool, how are you? You know, what's up? And so she started talking to me and telling me a bunch of cool things.
Right.
And then, you know, and the first thing that I realized was her voice is completely different to mine that I have right now, you know?
That's so
Her
fun.
voice is completely sweet and clear, you know what I mean? So very high, also pitched, right? So, yeah, and then I encountered her, I talked with her, you know, we had some chit chat. And then I woke up and I was like, that was awesome.
Right. Because
Again.
it is awesome. And I love that, like, whilst you're talking about it, because you said, I am fun, but actually the energy of that, like when you feel light and when you feel like at ease, and when it isn't this like completely serious thing, it's much easier often to tap in because you're coming from this like position of play as opposed to resistance. So I love to hear people's dream experiences and also the way everyone navigates, all of this to me, like at least with my work. Everyone who does a dream journey or a program, if you do like a spiritual retreat, it's the process, right? And it's how we show up in the process that makes the difference. And so sometimes it's harder and sometimes it's much easier, but I think you were saying earlier about how does someone begin to work with this? I think one of the best ways to do that, like when it comes to dreaming, is number one, just recognize that your dreaming space is actually very sacred. Like the experience you just shared, fun, totally fun and in a light way, but that's really powerful at the same time, and you really are connecting with your higher consciousness. And that's amazing because if you're in a period of life not being so easy, that's invaluable, right? There's so much help in that. And so for anyone who's listening who like, okay, well, how can I work with my intuition? How can I work with spirit? How can I learn more about archetypes and dreams? You start with what you're receiving first. Your own dreaming content is so helpful. Keeping a dream journal, waking up and at least trying to write 3 or 4 symbols down. Honoring it as not something random, even if the dreaming is random, right? So even if you watch a program the night before, and you wake up and there's threads of that program in your dream, there's still information as to how you're responding to that. And so it's super, super helpful. Everything is helpful information and not just dreaming, right? The way we connect spiritually when we walk through the world, that's really the realm of tying the two together. So again, like we were saying earlier, none of this is separate. None of this is separate. And so we heal that division by recognizing that. very consciously, or at least that's my recommendation.
Thank you very much. You know, what I have noticed for myself is that, like, how can I put this? Like, depending on your awareness on a daily basis, like when you stop checking in a lot of times with what am I feeling? Why am I feeling like this? What's the fear behind it? What's the shadow work that needs to be done? Things like that. And then before I go to sleep, I tell him, okay, this is what I'm working through right now. This is how I see it.
Yeah.
This is how I'm showing up, as you can see. So if there is anything that I'm not getting, or a message that you want to share, or misperception, or whatever it is, do it now, because I'm going to sleep. So, and then I wake up, I write it down, and then I start looking at the symbology. And what is also very important for me is that the Jungian interpretation may be amazing and all of that, but I need to do it myself, because I need to know myself. Like, a symbol that is to you a meaning for whatever can be to me a symbol for something different. So that's
Yeah.
also something to keep in mind, right? And then I look, okay, what are they saying, kind
Mm.
of? What's the dream telling me? And what I've noticed is that depending on your awareness, you will be able to see that there is a lot of validation coming through, and also maybe some further steps that you could be taking. So
Mm.
what is your experience? Because we're talking here, like always, about one coin, two different sides, or a line. Yes. So there are people who believe that they are not able to dream, or that they don't even dream. And there are people who get validation through dreams and all of that, and who walk their path like this, like you, I guess.
Sure.
So, tips for everyone, and how do you see this connected?
So, okay, first thing first, I think that it's very helpful what you said about understanding that even if a collective symbol shows up in your dream, like an archetypal symbol, we can look at that like a symbol of a mother, a symbol of a mountain, right? And most people, because we're also kind of it's in our generation, will go online and Google, what does mountain mean? And you'll see like a lot of websites will come up and they'll be like spiritual significance of mountain, dream meaning of mountain. And so in the original Jungian work, they never actually mapped it out as definitive meanings, because that's not the way they work with it. It's exactly in that you can have this energy that is larger, collective, like ancient tribal dreamers knew this. They knew when the symbols, right, are collective in nature and speaking about the collective. And they also know how to link into the personal meaning of it. So you're going to me, doing both is very helpful to recognize it. And exactly like you're saying, you incubate information before you go to sleep. It's an ancient tradition. There are temples in the world. So, we were talking about, you live in Malta, and in Athens, there are dream temples that people used to go to in real life, visit the temple, incubate the dream to receive healing, right? And so when you're doing a practice like you're explaining at night, I'm speaking to my guides, show me something, you're incubating that information. It's the same way when we sit in a meditation cushion, we go to an oracle deck and we ask for guidance on something, we incubate that, right? And so the symbols we see, the way we see it, the way we receive is having to just really pay attention and listen. And I think there's one thing here with dreaming that I think is worth noting. A lot of the time, we, like you're saying, operate from a very specific level of awareness, right? And so if we think we know the dream in its entirety, we very well may know that, right? And we are the ultimate authority on our own dreams. But we also need to understand at the same time that when we're asking for higher insights and we get a symbol that we don't understand. For example, maybe, a bird that pops out of a fire in a building, right? That's interesting the way the symbols interact together. And so it's helpful in those kind of moments to recognize that, well, we're given these things that we may not naturally put together, but it's done so that we can receive something new that we're maybe not seeing. And so I really recommend to people that when they begin to do this kind of work, to really try and show up and think about it for themselves before they reach for that dream dictionary or that online interpretation. But at the same time, you can use those general guidelines as mirrors to how you feel. So if you read something about teeth, for example, teeth are they're very prolific symbols, you know. It doesn't necessarily mean if you have a symbol like teeth that you have anxiety. That is a misconception. But then if you're reading all those things that are saying that, right? So say you happen to read an article about dreams, teeth falling out in your dreams, and then like 4 nights later you have that kind of dream. That's because the information was in the mind. And so, yes, then there is a link. And so the way we link everything, the way we make meaning, that's the work. And that's really the realm of the archetype, the medial archetype. And so it's really beautiful because it's a journey we can take, you know.
Thank you, Athena. So let's talk a little bit about the subconscious mind and what dreams tell us about it, how we can embody the lessons of the dreams, and how your oracle cards play a substantial role into that.
So I like to think that the oracle cards are just like a mirror for the symbols that we can receive. So in the same way in dreaming, we can receive through an oracle deck. And so that's kind of the connection there. An oracle deck can also work in the same way. So for example, if you shuffle the cards and say, show me something that is influencing me, but that I'm not paying, that I don't know, right? And then the cards will show you something that might be out of your awareness. And so that's the same way in dreaming when the subconscious or the unconscious mind, like you were saying, the river, you know, we're interacting with that river. And so that's such a beautiful way of connecting to it. And this is the subconscious or the unconscious. It's really just what the terms don't really matter. It just means it's out of awareness currently. And so if we bring awareness to it, it changes. You know, I think a lot of people sometimes think that, wow, the subconscious, there's all this like hidden stuff. And yes, there are. There are lots of motivators that motivate us. But at the same time, the more we show up, well, and it's a lifelong process. I don't think we will ever have everything in our awareness unless maybe we become like your Buddhas, like enlightened, right? So I think it's just a process and a journey of like receiving and also showing up, like a bi-directional dialogue that you are in, you know, with nature, with dreams, with spirits, with your own subconscious, with the people around you. Everything is connected.
I love it. So, would you like maybe to pull a card for the collective and tell us what this is showing us collectively?
Let's do that. I need to just open a deck.
Thank you. So, this is a very special reading because the cards are new. They just came into the sphere. They are now available.
They are
Completely new
available.
deck.
They're a fun deck. So the artist who Anna Santos, she lives in Spain, and we just found out that a Spanish edition is going to be made, but that's only going to come out in a while. So for anyone who's Spanish and listening, might be able to have it in your native tongue. Okay, so the way if anyone's new to Oracle decks, the guidebook is a really good place to start with any Oracle, with any sort of spiritual tool. It's very helpful to set the intention of what we're doing. I set an intention for all my decks before they go out to people so that people can only receive wisdom that's of the highest good for themselves and the collective. Otherwise, it just won't work. Okay, so let's pick a card for anyone who's watching this video at any point in time. That's so funny. In the card that popped out, the Seer of Dreams.
Consciousness manifesting, reality shifting. Awesome.
Yeah. So that's a fun one. And then let's do, because that's exactly what we've been talking about. There's only one or two dream cards in this deck, so that's cool. Calling back our power. That's powerful. And maybe one more. Just do three. So funny. Dream your dream your true north. And I think it kind of tells us something about the messaging that we were talking about, right? We're talking about dreaming. We haven't spoken really about how dreams co-create reality. We experience that when we have precognitive dreams, when we meet people we've never met, but we see them in dreaming and then meet them in real life later. The dream field is super just amazing. And we really have to, we would need more time to expand into that. So when we got the card, we saw reality shifting, co-creating with your dreaming, and also paying attention to dreams. And also it's a higher consciousness card. And when we asked to call back our power, we really asked to look at where we leak our own energy and why we do that. And then to also just not allow that to happen, or to call back our energy to us, to close the energetic tabs. And ultimately we do that so we can stay in alignment. When we're dreaming our true north, we're in alignment with the path of our souls or our higher awareness, higher consciousness. And so we keep pointing in that direction. It's not that everything is easier necessarily, but it does mean that there is more alignment. And often when there is more alignment, there actually is more ease. But that's also not to say that things like grief can't come up or happen. We experience a full range of emotions, and we should honor that. Well, thank you for letting me pull from my oracle deck, and I'm glad I could do that with you.
Thank you. I love it. I love cards. I don't know. I'm a total fan. I love the art in it, the meanings. Utilizing the intuition with it is just mega fun for me.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, of course. What else?
I mean, for you, because you're tapped in and tuned in, right?
Yeah, so let's talk about that exactly, because you said that you were also tapped in basically since childhood. So how did that develop? Was your environment like welcoming to these kind of things that happened with you, through you, and as you?
I'm very lucky that my parents are very open-minded when it comes to this. And I did grow up, I'm an 80s baby, so I grew up in quite an open household. But at the same time, it was something we spoke about at home. It wasn't necessarily something that was spoken about outside of the house. And I kind of internalized that. It took a lot of work for me to come out fully and not embrace that because it was with me, but to tell people about it. I still to this day do receive, not receive, but there's such appreciation for intuitive work, for oracular work, for this kind of way of being, and especially online, because this is where technology is so amazing. It can connect like you and me, worldwide people online. But I think in person, walking in the world, sometimes that's not always the case. So I think that it is definitely a journey, and something that I think many people experience. So for me, growing up in my home, it was wonderful in that way, but it did take time. I didn't tell my friends about it. I didn't tell. Do you know what I mean? So like there was definitely a level of just sort of being quite introverted in that way. But obviously not anymore, because here I am with my Michael deck.
Here I am, published author. How are you going to hide that?
No, and what would be the point? What would be the point?
Exactly. It's the work you came here to do.
Exactly. And I think what's been so wonderful, right, is seeing how many people resonate with the same type of energy and finding community in the most beautiful way. In the most beautiful way. I was part of a dream conference a couple of weeks ago, and literally they have people from all over the world, all these dreamers who meet at the same time. And I heard dreamers tell experiences living in Korea. I heard Japanese dream experiences. I heard a South African, American, Italian, whatever it is. And everyone brings something so special to it because we all have such different experiences, but together it really weaves something so beautiful, So I'm glad I'm part of that.
Yeah, that sounds really pretty awesome. So when did you start interpreting your own dreams?
I've always worked with my dreams since I was very young. I don't know if I would use the language interpret, but I felt like I would often wake up either like knowing what to do or feeling very different. And then I would say I kind of consciously started working with symbols. Actually, one of my friends, when I was a teenager, I was probably about like 13, her grandmother was very interesting. She's what I would call a wild medial woman. And she, she would like howl at the moon, and her whole family thought she was nuts. Nuts. And she gifted me a tarot deck, and it was quite an interesting one. It was an Egyptian one. And at the time, it had no guidebook, so it just had the cards. And where I lived, there weren't any esoteric shops, and online shopping wasn't a thing. So I was given this deck, and I would sit with it in the garden and work with it. And that was the first time that I think I was very conscious of like trying to interpret symbols and see what they meant. So it actually came through tarot and then developed later through dreaming. Well, the dreams were there, but you know what I mean if I think about it very cognitively. So it was quite a cool experience that she gifted me. And I later found the same deck in a synchronicity, so which was very cool because I was living in a different place and someone gifted me the same deck. So it was really nice.
It found its way back to you.
Found its way back to me, or I found my way back to it, whatever. Both of it. Both paths. Oh dear.
Intertwined.
Intertwined. So it's all connected, everybody.
Yes, exactly. It's quantum entanglement. That was the word.
Probably.
Oh man, I love it. So for starting to lucid dream, what I did was to do several times per day the test. Am I awake? Am I awake? Am I not? And I would try to go with my finger through my hand. I would look at my hand because usually the hands in dreams, they look very weird. They look like when you play those games online, you see the hands move around wobbly, wobbly, things like that. So what are the tips that you would tell people to utilize from your point of view? What is the coolest for you? And how do you utilize the dreams to elevate your consciousness, to embody more of the light that we are?
Beautiful. Thank you for these beautiful questions. I love the techniques you've shared. They're really well known. I think so many people right now are interested in lucid dreaming, which I'm absolutely so happy about. So the reality testing, like you're saying, where you do try and put your hand through anything solid, just a wall, a table, the hand, whatever it is. Looking down at hands can be a good one. I look down at my hands in dreams and they look the same. So I don't have that experience. And the reason I'm saying this, right, is sometimes with dreaming, the way we share our tips and techniques, one thing will work for one person and another will not work for another person. So it's not to give up if it doesn't work immediately. It's just to know that there are many pathways into lucidity. And also another one that I hear often, people tell me that they don't dream of cell phones, they can't read in their dreams. I don't experience that. I see cell phones and I can read in my dreams. And I have spoken to many people who can, and then also lots of people who think that's totally impossible. The reason I'm saying this is, again, when we're in the dreaming, when we're in lucidity, we're working with a different level of consciousness and a different way of interacting with fields of awareness, right? And so recognizing that as the number one tip. Okay, this is an experience. It's trial and error. So you can do the reality test of seeing pushing against your hand. If you're in a dream, it's very likely your hand can go through something solid. Um, so that's so super helpful, right? That's a really pragmatic technique. Sometimes other people will set an alarm an hour every hour to test if you are in a dream. And that's really helpful because what you're doing is you are training the subconscious or unconscious mind that we interact with in dreaming to begin to ask the same questions. And if you do that enough, exactly like what you shared, it will come up in a dream. So there we are. We find ourselves in a dream. We don't realize we're dreaming. I always like to give this example. Say I'm at my sister's house. I'm walking through the house, and then all of a sudden a thought comes up like, oh, this is my time for reality testing. And then I may be dreaming because now I recognize the house is the same, but there are some things that are different. Like maybe the furniture's moved around or the furniture looks different. And in that moment, we have the ability to become lucid. There are lots of techniques, lots and lots of techniques. So that's one. Reality testing, putting the timer on. I share lots of techniques with what we have at the moment with AI. We have so much information available to us. Anyone who wants to discover the pathway can just explore. The main thing is, I think the more consistent we are in our practices with these things, the more likely we are to experience lucidity. And also from my experience of working with lots of people who want to learn about this, sometimes some people may get that within a week, a lucid experience, a moment, and other people it may take them months or even years. And or you may go through a period of having lots of lucid dreams and then no dreams at all. And so to really just take out the what am I trying to say, the ego around achievement when it comes to this, and just trusting that it's a process and just to keep showing up and doing it. And lucidity flows into waking reality. And so you may see the same symbols begin to come up in waking life. And that's a good time to ask if you're dreaming.
Awesome. And how can we utilize those lucid dreams or dreams in general to embody more of our light?
I think that's such a beautiful question and it's such a big one. I think when we're in the lucid dream, so for anyone who's listening, the lucid dream and is new to this is when we're in a dream and we've just recognized we're dreaming. And in that moment, we can interact more consciously with the dream. So for me, I clear out the dream. I try to clear out the dream to make it an empty palette. So if I'm, say, in my sister's house and then I recognize I'm lucid, I'm dreaming, I try and clear it out. And then I will incubate a question, I will ask a question, or depending on what's happening in my waking life or what comes up to me in my thinking mind in that moment, I will then take the next step. But for anyone listening, you have great opportunity in that moment. If you're experiencing something painful, you can ask your dream for a resolution and you will see it in front of you. You can meet your higher self like you did in lucidity. You can go places. Wonderful, right? You can do fun things, breathing underwater, flying, seeing one thing become multiples, multiple things becoming one thing, controlling your awareness, right? And so that's just the beginning. That's just a beginning starting point. Lucidity is as limited as our thinking is. So how broad can your thinking go? How broad can your awareness go? And we can also use lucidity as an anchor point to go out of body. And so that's also like a whole lot of journeying that we can do. So it really just depends on what the person wants to do. Every single action to me in that moment is bringing in more light because you're doing it with more awareness, unless you're trying to do something harmful, I guess, in a lucid dream. And I think the dreaming would probably kick you out anyway.
Yeah, that's the thing. Let's talk about dreams and going out of the body. Do you do it? And when you do it, what is the most amazing experience you can share?
So I feel like going out of body, that we actually naturally all do this every single night. I think most of us are out of body, and what happens is that we come back and internalize a lot of those experiences as dreams. And so that's kind of the art of the dream world. So recognizing the spectrum of where we act and what we're interacting with. Yes, I go out of body. Sometimes I go out of body consciously, with intent. And some of the best experiences that I've had in those times, in those moments, has just been releasing what needs to happen and just allowing the higher part of me to take me to where I need to be. And that has always felt the best. Sometimes I experience that as light. Sometimes it's very tangible, as in seeing places, seeing people, connecting with non-physical energies. And so it's really just like a wide range of what you can do. I love to share the story of a woman who, it's not my story, but I share her story in my book, The Alchemy of Your Dreams. And she was actually part of this conference. And I think that's why her story is in my mind recently. But she had a dream experience where she dreamed she met this monk in her dream, and they would practice things together, like meditating. And she had this dream consistently over many, many months. And at the time, she was holding the thought, the intention of meeting with the higher part of herself, or with the divine image. And so when she woke up, she thought that was like a symbolic representation of something within her. She thought she was meeting that version of herself as a Buddhist monk. And then she had lucid experiences, and met him in lucidity. Fast forward 12 years or something in waking life, she's at a conference and she meets him in waking life. And they'd been training together. I mean, she knew that, I think, well before that time, but they'd been training together in dreaming. And so when we look at lucidity, even regular dreaming, out of body, it doesn't matter. The avenue doesn't matter, right? What matters is what we do with what we're doing. So for someone going, oh man, all I want to do is go out of body. I want to explore. I want to go and see Egypt. I want to do all these things. That's so amazing. That's so much fun. We can. But don't discredit the regular dreaming, because you're actually out of body most of the time. We're doing it naturally. The difference being we're bringing consciousness, like we're trying to be conscious in our intent to go out of body, or to lucid dream, or to work with guides in waking life. I write the same thing with an oracle deck. It's just the level of consciousness we're bringing.
Thank you.
Sure.
And let's speak a little bit about all the benefits that it can have. You have spoken about many, but let's talk about getting insights, information about you, previous lives, what you came here to do, maybe even inventions. It's said that Tesla was also a dreamer and he
Sure.
utilized that. So let's talk about that. What's your take?
So the idea for Google came through a dream. He woke up and received it through dreaming. Paul McCarthy's songs, so many people have received creative inspiration through dreaming. The DNA strand, the guy or the people who did that, I think that's also part of dreaming. There's so many examples. I share a lot of these examples in the book, and I can't think of more right now, right? We are absolutely open to higher insight and higher consciousness, which includes technological advances when we're dreaming. And we can play with that by incubating dreams, like you were suggesting, by meditating. People receive the same insight through meditation. We're not limited in how we can receive. And so I think it's wonderful that I sometimes get, oh yeah, I mean, when I write books, I'll dream about specific things that need to go into the book. And it's fun because it's a journey together, you know? So that's definitively something that can happen. When it comes to dreaming about parallel lives or past lives. I think that for me, the more I do this, I really believe that we have lots, our non-physical part of us can have many versions in many timelines concurrently. And so when we begin to practice lucidity, especially, it's very helpful because you can meet those versions more directly. But for anyone who isn't lucid and all, I say I'm not lucid every single night, even though I do this, right? You can try and meet those versions of you by simply requesting to and seeing that come up through meditation, dreaming, spiritual journeying. I would even say in people around you who maybe mirror things that feel quite intense, or if you come up against repetitive things. I've also had experiences where I've met people who haven't known me and they will call me by a very specific nickname, and and it's happened like kind of a few times throughout my life, and I know that's linked to another lifetime. So I know when they have that instinct to call me by that nickname, it's because they're remembering. So we have such great ability to connect in so many ways. And I think the thing that comes up for me as well is also having a bit of reverence around it. So much right now I feel like is about, and rightfully so, but like doing, it's all about doing. Sometimes the most helpful thing we can do is just step aside and just receive. Maybe a past life thing isn't as helpful as sorting out your relationships right now. So like the balance between it all. But that's so fun, and it's so amazing what you can do and connect with. So thank you for asking the question.
What is your highest vision for this new earth?
Such a nice question. I am not sure if I have a highest vision for it right now. I think I'm in the process of trying to feel my way through that, but I can tell you that it feels connected. It feels like humanity wakes up to a shared vision more consciously, and that all these topics that we've been discussing become very normal. I think in the future, humans are going to remember that we can create in much more interesting ways than we're doing currently. And that what is kind of taboo is going to become very normal. And so I look forward to that. And I think that we have the opportunity with technology right now to vision that going very well for humanity. And I think that's important. So I think the people like who listen to your podcast or who come to my dream groups or my archetypal journeys or whatever it is, that we are needed right now to hold that energy, and so not to fall, like we were saying earlier, into fear. I think that's really important right now, not to fall into fear. And so I feel like if we don't fall into that fear-based experience, the vision doesn't even need to be there because the feeling state at least is. So if you can't see the vision, at least hold the frequencies for it.
Thank you very much,
Okay.
Athena. We will be sharing your links down below for people to find out more about you, your books, your oracle cards, and all the amazing work that you are doing. Is there any parting message that you want to share with the audience?
I just want to say that each person listening to this, I hope you remember that you actually know how to do this, and that like all these things are just a remembrance of what is already within you. I want to thank you so much, Carolina, for having me on your show, and I'm so glad that we connected and that you're holding such beautiful energy by doing this work.
Thank you, Athena.
Thank you.